Hello chess friends and welcome to your Out of Chess channel and welcome to another spectacular gameplay by the latest version of Stockfish, the powerful Stockfish 16. Today we see the fish battling it out against another top engine rebel with the black pieces in a crazy Spanish variation of the 4 Knights game. The 4 Knights game is similar to the Spanish opening to the Ruy Lopez, but it's really a little bit different with different concepts, with different middle game strategies, with different ideas, but also with different possible tactics. So in my opinion, very important game, because this opening could happen to you, this sideline could happen to you. So then you want to know, of course, what's the best line, what's the best continuation. I guarantee you your Stockfish will show us simply the best ideas, the coolest tactics, also crazy spectacular tactical sequences, and also you can actively participate in this game, because I'll set up the critical position of this game for you at home. You can check it out. Maybe you can see also the tactics that happened here in this particular game. Can you see maybe the lines that Stockfish saw? So let's dive into the game with the white pieces here. Rebel open with the move e4. We have e5 by the fish, knight to f3, knight to c6, and after knight to c3, knight to f6, we have now the four knights game. After move knight to f6, we have now the Spanish variation. It's similar, of course, to the Spanish opening, because you played already with knight to f3, you played with bishop to b5, but the concepts now are a little bit different. Usually in the common Ruy Lopez theory, where you're trying c3, d4 and similar stuff, now this is not working because the knight on c3 is standing in the way of the pawn. So after bishop to b5, now comes the so-called Rubinstein variation with the move knight to d4, and many things can be played now by white. You could maybe attack this position like this. You could maybe take the pawn on e5, but actually this is not good, because after queen to e7 you retreat. We take out now the bishop, we take out now the pawn with the queen, and after a couple of trades of queens, of course there is the threat of knight to c7, but this can be protected with knight to d5. Maybe you can get challenged with c4, but we play a counterattack, and now after maybe a couple of trades of knights here, black should be better with the bishop pair all over the board. I think favorable continuation for black for sure. You could also try here knight takes d4 instead of knight to e5, but again, complications. E takes d4, you play maybe e5, we take. I would say this is a pretty equal position. Maybe white has a slightly worse pawn structure, this double pawn structure on the c file, but I don't see also now clear plans for black. Complicated game to play for sure. Probably a better endgame player would win this game. So but I would say this is pretty equal here. After knight to d4, that's why we have bishop to a4. Rebel is trying to keep the bishop pair on the board. Stockfish continues now with c6. Again, knight to e5 seems tempting, because now the bishop is not on the same square, but now the fun would be move like this, d6. After knight to f3 we pin the knight, and black should be actually better. We'll simply mess up the pawn structure, and with a5 b5 we could chase the bishop all over the board. So not a pleasant game here to play anymore for black. You could also maybe try to retreat to d3 after you took the pawn on e5, but again, this idea a5 b5 and a4 trapping the bishop, you're trying to escape. We play b5, you create some breathing spaces. Now we pass through, we take the bishop, we take the pawn, bishop to a6. Again, black should be much better with the bishop pair all over the board. There is this weakness, then of course a4 is weak, so too many problems in white position. So that's why after move c6 here, Rebel didn't take the pawn on e5. Rebel first of all fixed the structure with the move d3. Stockfish continues with a5 with the preparation to play b5 and a4. Now Rebel finally took. We have now the same idea, d6, and now comes after knight to f3, really the first critical moment of the game. Many of us, I would say, would play now bishop to g4, would continue with the same plan to pin the knight, but actually in this particular position it's not so dangerous, because now white continues with bishop to e3. You take, now we retreat with the bishop, and now comes a very dirty idea by white, rook to g1. You have to play something like b5 now. You want, of course, to trap the bishop, but actually Stockfish says, the Stockfish engine at home is saying here that white should be better after this piece sacrifice. After c takes b5, bishop to b5, knight to d7, Stockfish is saying here white is perfectly fine. Although down a piece, but too many pawns white has here as a compensation. especially centralized pawns that could be pushed now in the later stage of the game. So the pawn storm is coming with the support of the rook, with the, I don't know, maybe queen to d2, queenside castling and similar stuff. As I said, Stockfish is not liking this position for black, so really wild stuff. So that's why after knight to f3, Stockfish is saying here knight takes f3 is the best line. After queen to f3, you get an extra tempo. And you see how Stockfish prefers piece activity than maybe to mess up the pawn structure or to gain some material. Stockfish is always playing on the active side, is trying to activate pieces, put them on the most active square, playing the most aggressive style. Bishop to g4 forces again a reaction here by white. Here after queen to g3, now comes b5, and in one game between WhiteElo pawns against Anish Giri, WhiteElo pawns took actually here, knight takes b5, Anish Giri took, bishop to b5, sorry, knight to d7, it's not possible, bishop to d7, and the game actually ended again with a draw. But the Stockfish engine says here in this particular line that black is in favor here, +1 evaluation in black's favor. So probably risky line here for white. Now maybe these concepts to somehow storm in the center are not working. As I said, this game ended with a draw, but risky choice here by white. So that's why I've removed b5. Here Rebel, I think, also played a very cool theoretical novelty, played now beautiful d4. If you take now here the bishop, then this one is coming, e5, deflecting the knight from the defense of the bishop. Maybe after d takes e5, d takes e5, you have to step back, and now the bishop is lost. It's a whole different story. I think white should be better in this particular position. Crazy line. So that's why after move d4, Stockfish did not take the bishop so far on a4, played now simply queen to d7, protects of course the bishop. Now there is this threat of b takes a4, Rebel continues with f3, and now we have bishop to h5, and now e5 anyway. So you see, Rebel found really a beautiful novelty how to get out of this potential mess here on the queen side. After d takes e5, we have queen to e5, and now Stockfish covers with bishop to e7, and now knight takes b5. You see, great line also by Rebel. Seems so that something maybe even get wrong here for Stockfish, but Stockfish keeps it calm, plays now beautiful kingside castling. Of course, c takes b5 is not working because of bishop to b5 loses the queen. So that's why after knight to b5, kingside castling, knight retreats, but now Stockfish shows its mean plan. Stockfish is saying here, okay, you got a couple of pawns, but your king is stuck in the center. Your queen is lined up on the e file. Now I will destroy you. First of all, bishop to d6, queen to g5. We have rook from f to e8. What should you do? You have to escape to f2. You cannot secure the king in a different way. Now comes h6. So you see, Stockfish prefers this beautiful piece activity. With every move, now Stockfish creates a simple threat. Now suddenly white is on the defensive side. White has 2 extra pawns, but it's very tough now. The king is not on a natural square. The king is not secured. Many dark square problems. So from this point on, it becomes, I think, a one-way ticket in black's favor. Crazy line. Queen to h4, we have bishop to e7. Again, with some threats. Knight to g4 and with a check and trapping the queen. So that's why queen to f4. We have now the move g5. Queen to d2. For instance, if you get the queen to g3 here, this wouldn't be good because after queen to d4, check, you have to cover. Now we get the queen here. You're trying maybe to take. Now we play this one, bishop to d6. So again, black would simply keep the attacking flow. Where after queen to h3, look at this. Even this kind of an tactic is possible. You take this. You take this rook, queen to b6 is winning the game. For instance, you try king to e3, queen to b2. You try bishop to a8, we take, and now you're running even into a checkmate sequence here after bishop to c5. So too many attacking pieces are dancing in front of white's king in this particular line. So after move g5, as I said, you cannot escape here to g3. Here Rebel had to escape here to d2. Stockfish continues again the pressure. Good move here, bishop to d6, not allowing rook to e1 and then king to g1, securing the king in sort of castling by hand, because now this pawn would be lost, and this would be a messed up position now suddenly here for white. White could not escape anymore to g1. So now after move bishop to d6, Rebel tried another great idea. h4 is trying now to capture the pawn on h6. If you play here, of course, g takes h4 and similar stuff. My question here for you is, what's now the best continuation here for black? Pause the video just for fun if you like. Try to see now here the best continuation. Think about this position. what are white's problems, what are black's problems, how to activate the pieces further, how to maybe even not allow your opponent to activate these pieces. So very, very critical moment. I think in human level, many of us would mess this up now. So as I said, just for fun, maybe you can solve now this first tiny little tactic here in the middle game stage. Okay, here Stockfish played the amazing g4. G4 is beautiful because Stockfish allows here queen takes h6, but now actually after move g3 paralyzes now the rook on h1 and is not allowing here a rebel to castle in any ways anymore. So Stockfish is now basically saying, okay, you got a couple of pawns, but your rook on h1 will never participate anymore in this particular game. So after king to f1, we have now queen to e6. First of all, connecting the queen to the knight and also threatening checkmate. So that's why rebel has to escape. Has to cover this e1 square. We have bishop to f4. Great move again by the fish. If you take, then again, it's a checkmate on e1. We have queen to e2. We have now queen to d6. And now after king... queen to d1, it's time for you to shine again, maybe just for fun again. Pause the video and try to see now again the best continuation here for black. This is a little bit tougher. I think now it's the critical moment of this crazy game. Okay, here, Stockfish played the amazing knight to g4. Really, very wild stuff. For instance, if you try bishop to f4, then after queen to f4, you cannot take anymore the knight, and the knight to e3 would happen. You try maybe to get the knight here on e4 to somehow cover everything, but there's simply no good defense. Even if you try to escape here to g1, then we get this one, queen to e3 actually leads even into a checkmate. So that's why after knight to g4, we have f takes g4, but now bishop to c1. That's now the dirty part. The problem here for white is if you try rook to c1, then queen to f4 and queen to f3 is a problem because you lose the rook on c1. If you try to cover to take the bishop with the queen, then after queen to f6, you get actually checkmated. You cannot escape, of course, towards the e file because the rook is covering this file. Crazy idea. Let's see again. Knight to g4, we have f takes g4, and now bishop to c1. It's a crazy sort of a deflection and overload tactic here by Stockfish 16. We have now g takes h5. Rebel continues now to grab more pieces, but now comes another stunner here by the fish, rook to e3. It's sort of a beautiful idea to get the square f4 for the queen. What should white do? White has to play now queen to g4 check. Stockfish of course escapes. You don't have time here to play rook to c1 because simple queen to f6, and we have seen queen to f2 is winning the game. So that's why after king to h8, Rebel had to now play knight to e2 to somehow cover everything. We have now rook from a to e8, putting more pressure against this knight on e2. Again, if you try something like, I don't know, knight to g3, we'll simply play rook takes g3. If you play here rook to c1, then this knight is lost again with some problems here around the square f6. If you try here, for instance, bishop to c6, then rook to f2, king to g1, rook to c2 is, for instance, working. You're trying maybe to escape. We take the bishop, so the position is collapsing here for white. Even if you try here, I don't know, maybe something like queen to g3. Now look at this, rook to g8, continuing the pressure, and you will lose the battle simply here around the square g2. So that's why here after knight to e2 and rook from a to e8, Rebel continued with bishop to c6. We have now queen to c6 and now rook to c1. Knight to c1 is of course not working because of rook to e1. Again, a beautiful checkmate. So that's why for rook to c1, seems so that Rebel got out of this mess because now white has an extra piece. But now comes another beautiful idea, rook to e4, getting an attack against the square f4. So as I said, Stockfish is always trying to deliver this check, but in this previous line, white could always cover with knight to f4. So that's why here we have queen to g5. Now comes rook takes e2, queen takes g3, and now again queen to f6. Forces basically here queen to f3. Stockfish plays a beautiful counter attack, plays an attack against the rook. Rook has to step back, and now rook to e3, putting more pressure against the queen. The queen doesn't have any more good squares. Wherever we go, rook to f4 would have happened, and the game would be over for white. So that's why after rook to h3, Stockfish simply grabbed now the queen, and obviously this is game over. Stockfish grabs another pawn. Here simply activates the rook. This is not now fun, maybe game anywhere to watch, but let's see now how Stockfish handled also this position. Included now the rook into the game, delivered a check, took now this very important pawn on the d file that could be maybe problematic in the later stage of the game. We have rook to e8 the check, not a problem. We have rook to f4, queen to b2, and now we have rook to e3. Stockfish grabbed even another pawn, simply delivered check, grabs also another pawn. So this position is simple, easy to play here for black. The white position is simply collapsing. Queen to rook to g4, first a check, now Stockfish delivers another check, pins even the rook, and now simply sacrificed even the queen here for the exchange in order to create this passer. And here Stockfish was toying also a little bit with rebel, sacrificed the pawn, but after a couple more moves, white resigned. So great game by the fish. Great tactics, great ideas, I think, in the 4 knights game. The Spanish variation with this cool Rubinstein variation with this early hop by the knight on d4. In my opinion, really crazy game, worth to study. There are many sidelines, of course, opportunities for both sides, but as a cornerstone, if you are bothered maybe by this opening, this is, I think, a perfect example how to play here the game with the black pieces. So okay, I hope that you enjoyed this game. I really enjoyed it a lot. Interesting ideas, again, by Stockfish for sure. If you want to see some other great strategic, tactical, brutal games played by Stockfish and also by some other top engines, check out our commented chess games played by computers. Here's also the link. And if you want to see some games that we have covered now in the Candidates 2024 that's going on now in Toronto in Canada, please check out also our series. Here are some games that we have analyzed before. And if you like this content, hit the